So yeah, of course you can't organize Afrika Dag without zooming in on Ethiopia, because it's one of the most exciting and complicated nations in the continent today. We're going to have three people here who know inside and outside about what's going on, and I'm so happy to see so many people who are curious. I'm also happy to see that the King and Queen have joined us for this special occasion. We'll start with short presentations, and then of course we'll open it up for discussion. Anania Sohi is here, and he's an example of how political trouble can be bad for one side and good for the other side, because over a year ago he moved to the Netherlands. He has to stay here, and this is good for us, of course, while it's sad for the community in Ethiopia. He's a political analyst. He's very influential in the media discussions about what is going on now. That is why he also co-created the online platform EthioDigest Beyond the Headlines. Anania, the floor is yours. Please welcome him with a warm hand.
Thank you for the introduction. I think we have 10 minutes time to deliver our presentation. The title of my presentation is A Fragile Transition and the Need for Political Settlement. As you might probably have known or have heard from the international media outlets, there are positive steps in Ethiopia with the ascending of the new Prime Minister. So I think most of us know, but releasing the political prisoners and journalists, the peace with Eritrea, and the lifting up of the state of emergency, as well as revision of some repressive laws like the charities and the anti-terrorism law are fundamental to mention. But I will focus on the opening up of the political space. Since the coming of Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, he has opened the political space, and many exiled politicians have returned from Europe and the US, as well as from Eritrea, which used to expose armed struggle in Eritrea. So this opening up of political space is a blessing in disguise, in my view. It has a good opportunity, as well as it has posed a great challenge, because opening up the political space without having the necessary framework, framework of engagement, and without laying the foundations of the rules of the game, Abiy Ahmed naively invited these armed struggles to destabilize the stability, which has been, of course, established by repression. But now, this political space has been infiltrated by armed groups which want to make a political point by through force. So this has, complicated matters greatly. So we are now witnessing in Ethiopia communal violence, and ethnic evictions and internal displacements are on the rise. There are a lot of bad things like the proliferation of arms and questions of identity, huge number of unemployed youth, dispute over provinces, especially in Addis Ababa, and this things has been exacerbated because of the opening up of the political space. On the one hand, it is a good move towards democratization, but since it lacks a proper framework of engagement, it's now descending into fragmentation and anarchy. So this all boils down to the youth being instrumentalized by different political elites towards their political objectives. So this political mobilization and confrontation of the youth in different parts of the country is proliferating, and it all boils down to the breakdown of political order. So in Ethiopia, ethnicity has been the main organizing principle and philosophy, if you like, that has been triumphant or predominant on the political landscape. So the state has been overly ethnicized, and the federal arrangement and most political parties as well are functioning on the basis of primacy for their own respective ethnic groups. So these things have been interplaying throughout the last 27 years of the TPLF dominant TPRF, but now, since the political space is open and since the government is not repressing these differences between different ethnic groups, it's all playing out in very nasty ways, so that we are now seeing the first country who have an internal displacement greater than Syria. So what I have summarized is we need to prioritize the fundamental contradictions or the priorities. So in that regard, the new administration of Abiy Ahmed lacks a clear roadmap and a clear engagement, modalities of engagement to entertain these political actors accordingly. So we are now seeing as a result there is a humanitarian crisis and leading to a breakdown of law and order, and everywhere is instability and ethnic conflict. So this has been also deepening the divide along ethnic lines in Ethiopia. So to avert all these problems, we need to set the house or to put the house in order. And what I suggest here is elite bargain and political settlement is very critical to break this impasse, because at the end of the day, it is the political elites that are manipulating the youth and the ethnic groups to go against each other. So in this regard, the Ethiopian political elite has always been divided. There is no agreement on the country's past history. There is no agreement on the constitution, on language policy, and things like this. Also, the national identity issue is there. This Ethiopianness and ethnic, which needs to be mitigated. So, mediating the past, negotiating the future, and building consensus about the present is a must to go out of this quagmire. In this regard, Abiy has exemplified a very good, inspiring rhetoric of becoming a unifying figure, but his promises and rhetoric has not been translated into structural remedies, because the political structure in Ethiopia is overly ethnicized, but his rhetoric is towards national unity, and this Maddamer or synergy philosophy of his has not been translated into structural frameworks. So, in this critical period, since the extraordinary situations and times demand extraordinary measures, there has to be a statement that can show wisdom and that can, bridge the divide among the political elites willfully or tactfully. So we lack this statesmanship there. Because of that, there is a breakdown of rule of law and order. So my main message to convey today is Ethiopia is in transition. There are so many good things happening, but aside from, besides that, there are also flaring up of communal conflicts and ethnic conflicts, which are age-old and unresolved political elites issues. So the political elite of the Ethiopian political class needs to carve out some kind of negotiation and consensus building. So that is the way forward. Otherwise, this fragile transition is being confronted with very critical dangers, like the issue of Addis Ababa, the capital. There is a stiff, fierce competition between the Oromo nationalists and the Ethiopianists. So that also boils down to historical interpretations and the Ethiopian nationhood interpretations. So there are a lot of points to raise, but I think it's good to skip it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya, for laying the groundwork for the talk which we'll have after, of course. I find it actually, it's almost heartbreaking if you have to call Abiy Ahmed naive, because we hoped for more than that. We'll talk about possible strategies to follow in the future. Now, there's few people in this country, few Dutch people who know more about Ethiopia than the gentleman I will now introduce, Jan Abbing. He's an anthropologist, he's a historian, he works at the University of Leiden. He's been researching the history and the cultures of the Horn of Africa with a specific focus on Ethiopia over the past many years, so we're very proud to have him here. Here is Jan Abbing.
So, good afternoon. Thank you, Aino, and thank you, EthioDigest, for organizing this. It's a nice session, and it's very appropriate again to meet here almost exactly 1 year to the day. You know, the previous EBS was also devoted to the, 1 week after Abiy was in power, I think, or no, almost 2 weeks. So it is appropriate and nice. It's a nice occasion to evaluate what has happened in the past year. And Anani has made a very few very good points about the ethnicity issue. I had it in my speech also. My problem is, talking to a general audience, I get too academic. So I hope I can keep it in normal language, and I would like to cast the net a bit broader and speak about various aspects of this transition. The title of the day is, the making sense of the Ethiopian transition, of Ethiopia's transition. A very complex, very ambitious title. It has many aspects. I will just look at the trajectory of Abiy Ahmed as Prime Minister of Ethiopia. And of course, we are outsiders. I mean, I am an outsider, not Ethiopian. I should be very careful, it's cautious. But from that kind of perspective, I would like to add a few remarks. Well, I think, it is, let us start by saying that rarely in modern African history we have seen a leader like this current Ethiopian Prime Minister. We should not underestimate that. He is as unprecedented in his political voice and his really positive approach, his commitment to his country and people. He's of course searching for the right way to steer this transition period, of which he is of course the first phase. The second phase will happen after the elections of May next year. It will be phase 2. But so far he is putting things in place for this phase 1 of the transition towards perhaps a different political system, different approach to the political process in a country, which is very encouraging. And we should still be seen after 1 year of ups and downs with goodwill and with optimism, despite all these problems we have seen. The point is to look at these problems, I think, institutionally and in a historic perspective. Is his approach with his government team on the right track? Is he on the right track to tackle all these underlying problems? And can he involve political and societal partners in Ethiopia and the diaspora in that process? I think yes, despite all these, as I said, obstacles. The challenges are not only for the Prime Minister and his team, but also for the people of Ethiopia, the political opposition, the public as a whole. They have to take up the reform agenda more emphatically, The framework which has been set in the past year, they have to take that up and they have to be more involved, more cooperative. I mean, Abiy Ahmed, as Prime Minister, may not have done the optimal to involve everybody, although, in terms of elite bargaining, he has opened up this forum for the political parties, which is an ongoing issue, to involve all these parties to discuss about the coming political transition, to prepare the elections. So there is something is happening. I mean, because all these 101 parties, 107, I don't know how many there are. You know, we thought Holland has many parties, but Ethiopia has more than 100. These people come to the table and try to think about how to structure that transition. And they are elected, or maybe also self-appointed, as leaders of their respective ethnic groups. So there is a kind of elite bargaining already going on. It's not sufficient, but it has been coming off the ground. But what I find a bit regrettable is this demand culture emerging in Ethiopia. Ahmed has to do this, should do that, and so forth. And should deliver instantly. I think politicians shouldn't be seen as salesmen who can immediately deliver their products. I mean, it's a very different process, the building of a new political order and the opening of an inclusive process of participation. Rome wasn't built in a day. The question is, as I said, are things on the right track? And I think there is still this window of opportunity and of institution building, of revising the repressive laws and so forth, which is going on. And for many participants in this political process, I think it is, important to get away from the past. Many people in Ethiopia, many political actors, are seemingly still stuck in the past. They project the future purely on the basis of the past, on the basis of grievances, on the basis of what they did not achieve or they could not achieve, instead of radically informing themselves and orienting themselves towards what is possible in a new setup. And mind you, if you would have talked with us, if you would have met here 4 years ago, nobody would have foreseen that Abiy Ahmed would have opened up the political landscape of Ethiopia in the way he did. Nobody. Nobody could predict it. Even in Africa, he is a unique leader. Absolutely. I cannot think of anybody. He's also a much better leader than many people in the West. Not to speak of Trump and others. So he's 10 times better. So we should not underestimate what he has opened up. That doesn't mean he is, of course, beyond criticism, and of course it hasn't been slow in coming. I will not list his achievements, but there are, of course, things in the political field. Anani has mentioned them, allowing the political opponents back, even the armed wings of the parties, releasing all political prisoners, opening up the prisons, arresting people who have been abusing their power, who have been involved in bribery and so forth. Arresting notorious people like the previous Somali leader. So it is something is happening. Societally also, he has opened up because of his gender policy, because of appealing to a new ethos, a public ethos in the country. Look at his speeches. He stopped the discourse of always being against something. He stopped the discourse against imaginary enemies, and this should not be done. This should not be groups with ideologies. He tries not to denigrate others, but try to see what can be delivered by them, even if they are not completely in agreement with the policies and so forth of the past and of the present. And he is not creating fake oppositions in that way. And that is, of course, I have seen a couple of weeks ago a speech where he got angry. For the first time I saw him angry, responding to some politicians, as I said, who were a bit stuck in the past and judge everything from their own past vantage point. But that's rare, it's very rare for him to react like that. Regional politics, if you look at that, he has achieved, of course, a détente with Eritrea. He has reset relations with Somalia, with Saudi Arabia, with Sudan, with the United Arab Emirates. So his achievements are promising, although not, yet there. Economics, he has announced a policy of improving, the ease of doing business in Ethiopia, to combat youth employment, enhance the power of the private sector, open markets. And he's moving from a state developmental model towards a more liberal model. I think there, if I would have criticism, I would say take it easy with converting yourself to a totally neoliberal model, because Ethiopia needs a modicum of state developmentalism. It has been started and it has to be finished. He also said in various of his speeches, and all his ministers said, we have to finish the Courage plantations, we have to finish the Udasi dam, the Nations dam. So apparently he wants a mix of both state developmentalist projects, and I think that's inevitable, although it should be in totally different conditions, it should be more negotiated, and opening up the private sector and towards the global market, certainly. And he has also reconnected to the diaspora. And I think you all know that it has been quite successful. He has galvanized support from many quarters in the diaspora communities in the US, in Europe, and elsewhere. The underlying challenges, if you talk about challenges for this transition period, I think, and here comes my scientific bias again, sorry, perennial problems of land, the land issue is not resolved. The land issue is an issue clothed in fear. There is fear about talking about land problems and tackling land problems. People also during the government don't know, should we privatize, should we make communal ownership, should we leave it as it is, everything state property? No. But there is fear about really openly discussing the land issue, also because it is tied to ethnicization, the point Anania raised rightly. Because the ethnicity, maps is territorialized, which is extremely complex. But there is new lawmaking necessary on the land question, certainly. Not only because of social justice and so forth, but also for purely economic reasons. Commit farmers, and farmers are still the majority of the people in the country, and 45% of GDP. Commit the people to owning, to having a stake in the land, much more than is today the case now. I suspect even that all these IDPs, people deciding in one day or another to go away from a country, from the area which is in conflict, is partly because they feel no real bond with their land. They have no possession in the land. They fly away at the first provocation. That may be one factor. The second thing is the political demography of Ethiopia. We might say, there's youth employment and so forth, and youth unemployment. That will not soon go away because population growth keeps on increasing, and the ratio in demographic theory, we talk about demographic dividends. If the ratio between the working population and the dependent population is, above 1.5, 1.7, so 1.7 working person and 1 dependent. If it's beyond that, say 1 to 5, 1 to 3, I think Ethiopia is 1 to 3, then you have a problem because you can never get sufficient people at work, and it will also dampen economic growth. That is a kind of political demography underlying a lot of problems in Ethiopia. Environment is a problem, a third one, and a fourth one, which I will not belabor on, is ethnicity as fake liberation. Ethnicity is good to recognize. Ethnic autonomy is good. Finally, people can be more themselves, can act on their identity. But as Anania also referred to see it in all respects, and especially in the political domain, as a primary identity is not going to work. I said it before, but I think it's still very relevant. And that ties into what I said, that many political partners are stuck in the past, and stuck in kind of grievances from the past, which should be addressed maybe in a different kind of way. I finish with 4 challenges. I think the justice system in Ethiopia should be strengthened, more professional, more reliable, better paid, should be faster, and so forth. It is in progress. But I met many people working in the judicial sector in Ethiopia. They are proud of their job, and they talk about frustrations which they have seen in the course of their career. They want to do their job. They don't want political interference. And there, if that is strengthened, you gain a lot, because let's forget, the third sector, the judicial sector, is the third pillar of democracy. Beyond the executive and the legislative, the judiciary is a very strong pillar of a genuine, mature democracy. The second thing is inclusive economic growth, and the control of socio-economic inequality processes should be more strengthened. Also, functional local economies should be respected and strengthened, and not be cast aside by huge plantation and so forth, and other issues. I think, these building structures of political communication. The Prime Minister started with his political parties forum, but you could think of more political structures for communication of the population with the authorities. A kind of experimental discussion forum and so forth, which can give them a resolution, binding or non-binding, to higher echelons and so forth. That might be another issue. Last thing, needless to say, is to diffuse the excesses of political ethnicization. That is, of course, a balancing act. You know, Prime Minister Abiy is a member of the Oromo Democratic Party, an ethnic party. He's also a national Prime Minister. He has to cater to the two constituencies. That's inevitable. And the balance is very difficult. You should respect that he has the difficulties, you know. He is committed to this national agenda, but also to the regional Roma agenda. But I think this dilemma which he faces is difficult and should be respected. Leadership, yeah. If we talk about transition, Abiy has been firmly in control of the whole transition process in the past year. His charisma, many people talk about his charisma. Certainly, he has charisma. He speaks excellent. He's an excellent speaker, combining all the three classical ingredients of persuasive rhetoric. He has them all. But charisma is, of course, not enough. It creates dependency on one person. It creates fragility. But you know, yeah, that's true. But charisma is a good start. It has been a good start in this transition period. He speaks directly to the concerns of Ethiopians with his personal, his open approach. And who did this before him in Ethiopia? I don't see anybody. So Abiy's policies have offered unique chances. Alternatives, I don't know. They may be worse. They are probably worse. There are many. But the alternatives are often sectarian in nature. And I think at this juncture in Ethiopian history we should perhaps avoid that. So that is my final advice, so to speak, my final observation. Thank you.